This week in Texas, we discuss the political reaction here in our state to the ongoing ICE action in Minneapolis. You'll hear from the author of Texas's concealed carry law and what he thinks of the shooting death of Alex Preddy. Also, we take you to Johnson Space Center for Pooja Lodia's one-on-one interview with NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, and a conversation with our political insiders Angel Carroll and Court Kenning about the 2026 election contests flying under the radar this week in Texas.
And hello again, I'm Tom Abrams. This week in Texas, we turn our attention to the aftermath of the deadly shooting in Minnesota and how some Texas politicians are voicing their concerns regarding Immigration and Customs Enforcement and its operations in Minnesota. Governor Greg Abbott and Senator Ted Cruz are both supporters of the president, and both have publicly supported the increased effort to find, arrest, and deport or prosecute criminal undocumented immigrants. But their comments seem to indicate recent developments have given them pause.
Governor Greg Abbott has been vocal about defending the Texas border from illegal crossings and undocumented immigrants. The National Border Patrol Council has endorsed his campaign for a fourth term. But on a radio program this week, he spoke about the need for the White House to rethink its approach in Minneapolis after 3 shootings in a month, 2 of them fatal.
In general, we need to have respect for law enforcement officers in the country. ICE, they are law enforcement officers. And so they, being the White House, need to recalibrate on what needs to be done to make sure that that respect is going to be reinstilled, and that's not an easy task, especially under the current circumstances.
He is not alone in his critical assessment. Senator Ted Cruz also spoke about the government's response immediately after the latest shooting, which left an intensive care nurse dead after federal officers fired multiple shots at him in the middle of the street.
Immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing, that we took out a violent terrorist, hooray. Escalating the rhetoric doesn't help, and it actually loses credibility.
Republicans in Congress want answers from ICE. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky said he has asked leaders from the heads of ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and USCIS to testify. Abbott said the White House will shift its approach.
But I know that they're working on a game plan to make sure that they are going to, let's say, recalibrate and maybe work from a different direction to ensure that they get back to what they wanted to do to begin with. And that is to remove people from the country who are here illegally, go about their job in a more structured way to make sure that they are going to be able to remove these people without causing all the kinds of problems and fighting in communities that they are experiencing right now.
Another prominent Texas Republican who authored the state's concealed carry law wrote an opinion piece this past week critical of ICE and the administration. Jerry Patterson is the former Texas Land Commissioner, and as a state senator, he authored Senate Bill 60 in 1995, the state's concealed handgun law. He is pro-Second Amendment and says he does not like the rhetoric he hears coming from Washington. In an opinion piece published in newspapers across the state entitled, "I carry a handgun, am I a domestic terrorist?" he asked the question, if I brandish my handgun in the presence of a peace officer, I expect to get shot. If it remains untouched in my holster, I don't expect to get shot. Until Saturday in Minneapolis, that was a pretty simple concept. What happened? He also asked, should the vast number of Texans licensed to carry a handgun be concerned? If you're dealing with Texas peace officers, I think the answer is almost always no. Dealing with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement or Customs and Border Patrol might be another matter. And he wrote, ICE is needed, but not this ICE. This ICE and its leadership need to go now. I spoke with Patterson about why he felt compelled to author the editorial.
There's a lot of trying to change the subject going on, or they're talking about Medicaid fraud, about Tim Walz, but the bottom line is we had a guy unlawfully killed at a demonstration. He wasn't even a part of it, and some of the excuse for shooting him was, well, he had a gun. And even the FBI director, Kash Patel, said that was unlawful. It's not. And more egregious was, I mean, the shooting and the killing, which I believe to be unlawful, that's pretty damn egregious. But what was particularly irritating to me was all the lying that went on afterwards. You know, Kristi Noem said he was there to kill law enforcement. He was a domestic terrorist. That was parroted by, by a couple of other administration people. The president said weighed in and said that the BLM, not BLM, that CBP and ICE were doing a good job. Stephen Miller even weighed in with he was a terrorist, deserved to be shot. And those were just lies. I mean, when they were saying those words, the videos were already out. Now the videos weren't, frame by frame, and they weren't as clear as they are now because we've had more videos, but it was clear that you couldn't make that kind of statement. It was clear that he was being backed up, that he didn't approach. Noam said that he actually approached ICE agents with a 9mm handgun. He didn't. I mean, how would they know that he had one in the small of his back in a holster? So that was the most egregious part to this. And being a concealed handgun carrier and being the author of the bill in 1995 and a guy that carries all the time, I know the law pretty well. I mean, I don't know Minnesota law, but per Minnesota law, he had every right to be there, armed or not.
So is this a First Amendment issue, a Second Amendment issue? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I guess it could be both, and you could throw in the Fourth Amendment as well, due process. I mean, we haven't given this guy due process. There's no, they keep talking about a investigation, and there's no evidence there's actually one going on. And I'm not sure I would trust the FBI, who would normally be who would do an investigation, to do it after Kash Patel came out and said it was his fault that he got killed. So it's first, second, fourth, maybe a few more. And it might be the fifth at some point in the future when these people are interviewed, the shooters, if in fact they are ever interviewed.
What compelled you to write the opinion piece?
It just irritates me. Lying irritates me. And there's an unbelievable amount of lying out of this administration. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's like every single day. And then we have this terrible incident, and the immediate response is not to, call folks in Minnesota and say what happened. The immediate response is to have a press conference and say that he was a domestic terrorist. That's a lie. It's particularly egregious, in light of where you normally find these kinds of activities and liberty violations, and that's places like Iran. China, Russia, that's what goes on there. But now it's going on here. And it's pretty damn scary.
We've heard Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, strong supporters of ICE. The governor is certainly no stranger to immigration enforcement here in the state of Texas, backing off a little bit their support of what's happening in Minnesota. Is that your thoughts about that?
They're triangulating. It's timidity. Okay, what can it's going through this thought process. What can I say? What can I say that lends a little credence to maybe ICE has screwed this up, but without jeopardizing myself in the next primary? Now, I won't have another primary, so I have nothing to worry about. So maybe that's why I'm saying these things without concern for my own personal future politically. But those are teeny first steps. The governor of Oklahoma stepped out a little stronger, and I hope that if I were Trump, I'm in a hole. I'm in a big hole. Don't dig any deeper and start doing things that get yourself closer to the top. The first thing that should be done is Noam should be fired. Patel should be fired. Bondi should be fired, although Bondi hasn't been too egregious in this particular episode. We don't need timidity. We don't need triangulation. We don't need trying to play both sides. Just come out and say what happened is a terrible stain on liberty in this country.
Let's talk more about the fallout and the reaction with our political insiders, Court Kenning and Angel Carroll. Angel, we'll start with you. Your thoughts about Texas politicians, specifically Republicans, and how they're reacting to what's going on in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I think Patterson is correct. What we're seeing right now with ICE, it needs to stop and it needs to go. ICE is operating fully outside of their bounds, and I'm happy to see that we have Republicans also that are speaking out against it. The truth of the matter is, ICE is doing, not only not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're arresting folks that have a legal standing and are allowed to be here. They're detaining and holding 5-year-olds hostages, and quite frankly, beating up citizens. This is not okay.
Court, your thoughts?
Well, let's think about how this happens for these elected officials being involved in this issue. It's because they're going to dinners and these kind of events where they're hearing from their constituents who are uncomfortable with this. And we got to remember, we're asking law enforcement to do what is the job typically of the military, and that's door-to-door operations. And it's messy. It's not good. And you know, we can delve into the specifics of this particular last event, but they haven't been good. They haven't been good.
You talk about the military. Those are the sorts of operations that the military undertakes in other countries. They don't do that on the streets of the United States.
And speaking of other countries, isn't it good that we don't live in a society like Iran, where they're killing protesters in the thousands?
Well, I mean, I might agree with Jerry Patterson on this and say that one is too many, right?
Oh, sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
Your thoughts,
Absolutely.
Angel?
I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I think it's sad that it has taken a white man and a white woman to be murdered by federal agents for us to have a real conversation about police brutality. And when this has been happening to the Black and brown community, and their First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights have been continuously challenged in this country. And I think it's very important to add that I actually don't think that Governor Abbott is saying what ICE is doing is wrong. What we've been seeing nationwide, it's happening in Texas. He's saying be smarter about it so we can change the headlines. And so I don't think it's about tactics. I think it's about optics for him.
Do you agree with that?
I think that the governor and Senator Cruz are making comments related to what the news reports are. That's not an investigation, and the investigation is ongoing, and we'll let it play out. We need that fairness of not just the public citizens, but also ICE agents and other law enforcement agents to do this, because this is going to have a ripple effect for all those kind of things.
Now, as of Wednesday, the two agents who fired the shots, the two Customs and Border Protection agents, or Border Patrol agents, they were placed on paid leave. Mm-hmm. It's now several days after this happened. Is that something that should have happened sooner, or do you think that's just part of the process as it works itself normally?
What should have happened sooner, Tom, is securing our borders. We're in this predicament because we've gone decades without securing the border, and now we're trying to do it in a week.
It's absurd. It should have happened sooner. They should not be paid. And at some point, we have to stop making excuses and say that we should not have mass folks in unmarked vehicles going around harassing folks.
Do you see it happening in Texas, or as long as Texas votes red, it doesn't happen under a Republican administration?
Well, I think Texas is doing more than just voting red. I think Texas is devoting a considerable amount of resources to border protection when it's a federal responsibility.
Right, but there are more undocumented immigrants in Texas than there are in Minnesota.
Well, it's about location, 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 isn't it? I mean, we share a border with Mexico. Minnesota doesn't. So that's what they were dealing with.
Any final thoughts, Angel?
It needs to stop, point blank in the period. This is not the America that I grew up in, and not one that I'm proud of right now.
Angel?
And we go back to the issue is, it needs to stop. It needs to stop by protecting the border and stopping illegal immigration in this country.
Court, Angel, thanks for your thoughts on this sensitive subject. When we come back, we're going to take you to Johnson Space Center ahead of the Artemis II launch and Pooja Lodia's exclusive interview with the new administrator of the space agency. Welcome back to This Week in Texas. For the first time in more than 50 years, NASA is preparing to send astronauts to the moon, and liftoff is coming soon. In an exclusive interview with NASA's new administrator, our Pooja Lodia asked about the future of spaceflight, how Houston fits into it, and of course about whether our city will ever get a space shuttle to display.
When Artemis 2 blasts off, it will be controlled from right here at the Johnson Space Center.
I would say this is the most important human spaceflight mission for NASA in more than a half century.
Jared Isaacman was sworn in as NASA's 15th administrator just last month after a contentious confirmation battle in the Senate.
Every mission, throughout the history of the space program, you hear Houston come over the radios, right? So that just goes to reinforce the importance of this facility.
But the Space Center did not get a retired shuttle to put on display after NASA's shuttle program ended in 2011. Funding to get one here was included in President Trump's recent funding law, but it hasn't happened yet.
So can you promise Houstonians we're getting our shuttle?
I can certainly promise that we will do everything within our ability and within the law to try and make that happen.
But for now, the focus is all on Artemis 2. This mission, Isaacman hopes, will pave the way for a lunar landing in 2028.
This is a mock-up of what these astronauts will be flying in. You can see it is pretty cramped inside. These 4 astronauts went into quarantine just today. The earliest they will be taking off would be in 2 weeks. Reporting from the Johnson Space Center, Pooja Lodia, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Thanks to Pooja for that report. Let's talk about NASA and the shuttle Discovery. It is currently at the Smithsonian in Northern Virginia. Should it come to Houston, the home of manned spaceflight? Court and Angel join me again. Court, we'll start with you. Your thoughts about whether the Discovery should have come here in the first place and whether it should come now.
I don't even think those questions are legitimate, Tom. No offense, but it should have been here. We shouldn't even be asking this question. The Johnson Space Center is where, once they get into orbit, the space shuttle or craft gets into orbit, that's where the communication is done. That's where NASA's headquarters is. Why not have a shuttle here? It makes no sense other than politics. That's where the mistake was done. The decision was made politics, not for space exploration.
And so you think, obviously, it should come here?
Yeah. If not another one, let's have 2 here. Right. Space cadets made this decision, not real folks.
Your thoughts as a native Houstonian?
I mean, look, you think we'd already have one here, right? But when I think about Space City, this is where history, for humanity, right, is centered around space discovery. So I think it should be here if the cost makes sense. And if not Discovery, another one. And it also will help continue to boost the economy when it comes to tourism.
And we got a baseball team named after Astros. AstroTurf is not because it's AstroTurf, it's because it was Astros.
Right, the Astrodome.
Exactly.
Right, and they wear the Space City uniforms. I mean, and the first word spoken on the surface of the moon?
Houston.
Right?
So
dot.
Exactly. I think that is the real. You said it was not a legitimate question, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I remember at the time when it did not come here, how aggrieved the entire city was.
Devastated, frankly.
The question, I guess, now is it fair then to take it from the Smithsonian and bring it here so many years later?
I think that's a fair question that I don't have the answer to. I've been able to see it in the Smithsonian. It's grand, it's majestic, right? Houston might have another problem if it doesn't come.
You've been saving that one.
Well, I mean, worst case scenario, it should be headquartered in Houston, but maybe it's a traveling roadshow.
Oh, that you just drive it very slowly along America's highways?
Exactly. Don't put on the thrusters, but have a tour, kind of like we do with the Vietnam War Memorial.
Oh, have a traveling version?
Yeah, a version of it. So,
which I guess they have a smaller version, right, at Space Center Houston, along with the
we don't have to steal it in the middle of the night from the Smithsonian. We can just make it headquartered here.
Or maybe even with these next upcoming missions, right? We can get one of those.
One of those rockets.
Yeah, one of those rockets here.
All right.
Or SpaceX one.
It's funny. You don't think on the surface necessarily that the shuttle Discovery and it being here is political, but it's been political every step of the way. And space certainly is a political program with its ebbs and flows during various administrations. Angel, Court, thank you for your perspective on that. When we come back, Court and Angel join us again, and they share their thoughts about the most overlooked races of 2026 so far. Welcome back. We've profiled a lot of high-profile races on this program, looking at some of the competitive contests in 2026. But there are some we have not discussed. For that, Court Kenning and Angel Carroll offer up what they think about the ballot and the races fewer people tend to talk about. We'll start with you, Angel. Your thoughts about a race or some races?
Yeah, 2 races that I have top of mind. One is currently in a runoff in Tarrant County. Taylor Rimmet, we have a real opportunity as Democrats to take a Senate seat, Senate District 9. So I think that's going to be really important and exciting for folks right now. Here locally, we're talking a lot about top of the ticket races, but one that's at the bottom, closer to the very bottom, is our county party chair races. And these are the folks that actually set the agenda for the party. Democrats have a county party chair, Republicans have their county party chair. And so for the first time in 12 years, voters will have an opportunity to pick who that chair is. And we have someone, Tracy Gibson, who is challenging the incumbent, Mike Doyle, and really calling out issues that voters have right now.
All right, Court, your thoughts about a race people aren't paying attention to.
And I'm not going to get in trouble from anybody that I don't mention, because what the deal is, if you're running for office, it's a pretty important thing that needs to be identified. I still think that I believe that the decisions that most people make in November are actually made in March, when the decisions of the primaries are made, or the runoff of the primary. But if you're running for office right now, there's only 2 ways to run for office: unopposed or scared. And so that's what happens when you're running for office. And so I think the primaries are important. Let's try to encourage everybody to get in the November voters to vote in the March primary.
I will tell you, we've talked a lot about the governor's race, to the effect that there is one, lieutenant governor, U.S. Senate, several House races. What we've not talked about is an important but less talked about role, which is comptroller. And on the Republican side, it's a very crowded field, including somebody who was appointed to the position when Glenn Hagar left to be the chancellor of the Texas A&M system, and then a former candidate and state senator, Don Huffines. Are you surprised by the polling that shows Huffines seems to be leading that very crowded race?
No, because he's dumping a lot of money into the race. A lot of TV going on already, a lot of text messages I'm getting from him. Yeah, so I don't see that. What we do see is that if you're a statewide elected official, your next spot is another office or in charge of a statewide educational, higher educational center. So, no, I'm not. I think it's good to have that competition. You got to get 50% plus 1 vote in order to avoid a runoff. And that's the most important thing that they've got there, because when a runoff happens, all bets are off. The number 1 candidate doesn't always become the number 1 candidate in a runoff.
And data shows that. You said something really important, though, because I'm hearing a lot right now about primaries and why do we have, whether it's Democrats or Republicans going up against each other, and you said competitiveness. And again, going back to the fact that in November, we typically have voters that say, I don't like this candidate, they don't align with my values, I'm going to sit it out. And this is why March primaries are incredibly important, because it allows for a healthy discourse and conversations about which person do I believe is going to represent my values the best in the long run.
And to underscore that, I would say that you've got these folks that are running in March talking about themselves more. Mm-hmm. They're actually talking about being a candidate. But in November, they're running more on a party label than they are for themselves.
Are you agreeing with me, Court?
I'm underscoring what you said.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Which means you're agreeing with her,
well,
but emphatically.
That line could be on your words and not under your words.
Well, we will end with agreement, as it so rarely happens. Angel, Court, thanks as always for being with us on this episode. And This Week in Texas will be right back. That's it for this episode of This Week in Texas. Thanks for being with us. We hope you'll watch our next episode when we sit down with 2 Democratic candidates for lieutenant governor facing off in the March primary. We also have interviews with both Jasmine Crockett and with James Tallarico, running for the U.S. Senate on the Democrat side. Until then, you can see any of our previous episodes by going to abc13.com or our ABC 13 app on any of your streaming services. All of our episodes are available on demand. Until next week, be kind to one another.